Edgar Cayce discovered that consciousness remains fully active for exactly 15 minutes after the heart stops beating. And during this time, the soul experiences 3 distinct stages that determine its entire transition to the afterlife. In his documented readings from the 1930s, Cayce consistently described how the departing soul maintains complete awareness while witnessing its own physical death. But here's what's even more shocking about these findings. The soul actually has choices to make during these critical minutes that will shape its entire next phase of existence. This revelation comes from Cayce's extensive work with over 14,000 psychic readings conducted throughout his lifetime in Virginia Beach. Known as the sleeping prophet, Cayce would enter a trance state and access what he called the Akashic records, describing it as a cosmic library containing the complete record of every soul's journey through multiple lifetimes. If you're ready to discover what really happens during those crucial first 15 minutes after death, and why this knowledge could transform your entire perspective on dying, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what you're about to learn comes directly from the most documented psychic readings in American history. But wait, before we explore these 3 stages, you need to understand something that appears consistently throughout Cayce's death-related readings. According to the documented cases in the ARE archives, the soul doesn't experience pain or fear during these 15 minutes. Instead, Cayce described a state of heightened awareness where the departing consciousness can observe everything happening around its physical body with crystal clarity. Here's what Cayce revealed about the first stage, which he called the recognition phase. During the initial 3 to 5 minutes after physical death, the soul realizes it has separated from the body but remains connected by what Cayce described as a silver cord of energy. In readings from the 1940s, he explained that this is when the soul first understands that physical death has occurred, but the emotional and mental bodies remain completely intact. This changes everything about how we should think about the moment of death, because according to Cayce's documented work, the soul isn't lost or confused. It's actually experiencing the most profound awakening of consciousness it has ever known. In verified cases from Cayce's readings, he described how souls in this first stage often try to communicate with loved ones who are present. The soul can see and hear everything happening in the room, understanding conversations and feeling the emotions of those around the physical body. But here's the remarkable part that appears in multiple archived readings. The soul often feels a sense of freedom and relief, rather than sadness or fear. But wait, there's something even more incredible about this first stage. According to Cayce's documented work, the soul begins to review its most recent lifetime not as a judgment, but as an educational experience. This isn't the full life review that happens later, but rather a preliminary understanding of the lessons learned and the growth achieved in the life just completed. Now here's where it gets really fascinating. The second stage, which Cayce called the transition phase, typically occurs between minutes 5 and 10 after physical death. During this period, the soul begins to perceive dimensions of reality that were invisible during physical life. In readings from the ARE archives, Cayce described how souls report seeing deceased relatives, spiritual guides, and beings of light approaching to assist in the transition. This is when the soul faces its first major choice point. According to Cayce's documented readings, some souls immediately recognize these helping spirits and move forward with them, while others choose to remain near the physical realm for various reasons. The choice made during these crucial minutes determines how smooth or challenging the overall transition will be. Here's what Cayce discovered that shocked his associates in Virginia Beach. Souls who have prepared themselves through spiritual study and service during life recognize this moment immediately and embrace the transition with joy. But those who lived purely material lives or harbor strong earthly attachments often resist moving forward, creating what Cayce described as a state of spiritual confusion. In one of his most documented cases from the late 1930s, Cayce described a soul who chose to remain earthbound for several days because of unfinished business. This reading revealed that the 15-minute window is critical because it's when the soul has the clearest perception and the strongest ability to make conscious choices about its next phase of existence. But here's something that will give you chills. According to verified readings in the ARE archives, Souls who resist the transition during these 15 minutes often become what Cayce called earthbound spirits. They remain trapped between dimensions, unable to move forward to higher realms of consciousness, but also unable to return to physical life. Now let's explore the third and most crucial stage that Cayce revealed. Between minutes 10 and 15, the soul enters what he called the orientation phase. This is when the silver cord finally dissolves completely, and the soul must make its definitive choice about where to focus its consciousness next. According to Cayce's documented work, souls at this stage are greeted by what he described as teachers or guides who help them understand their options. Some souls choose to move immediately to higher dimensions for continued learning and growth. Others decide to prepare for another incarnation on Earth. But here's the key insight from Cayce's readings. This choice is made based on the soul's level of spiritual development and its understanding of universal laws. In readings from the 1940s archived at the ARI headquarters, Cayce explained that souls who have developed strong spiritual awareness during physical life naturally gravitate toward higher dimensions of service and learning. These souls recognize that death is simply a graduation to a more expanded state of consciousness. But wait, there's something even more profound that Cayce discovered about this final stage. According to his documented readings, the soul's consciousness doesn't diminish after death. It actually expands dramatically. Souls report being able to perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously, understand universal principles with perfect clarity, and feel connected to all life throughout the cosmos. Here's what this means for you right now. According to Cayce's extensive work, how you prepare for death during your current lifetime directly influences your experience during these crucial 15 minutes. Souls who have practiced meditation, studied spiritual principles, and focused on service to others navigate this transition with ease and joy. But here's the part that changed everything for people who studied Cayce's work in Virginia Beach. The sleeping prophet revealed that death isn't something to fear. It's actually the most natural and beautiful transition a soul can experience. In verified readings from the ARE archives, he described death as like taking off a worn-out coat and putting on beautiful new garments of light. According to documented cases from Cayce's work, souls who understand these principles report that the 15 minutes after death are filled with more love, peace, and understanding than they ever experienced during physical life. The presence of spiritual guides and deceased loved ones creates an atmosphere of welcome and celebration, rather than loss and separation. Now, here's something that will absolutely astound you. In readings from the 1930s, Cayce revealed that souls maintain their individual personality and memories after death, but they gain access to universal knowledge that was blocked during physical incarnation. This means that in those 15 minutes, you become more yourself than you've ever been, not less. But wait, there's one more crucial element that Cayce discovered about these first 15 minutes. According to his documented work, the quality of a person's thoughts and emotions at the moment of death significantly influences their transition experience. Souls who die with love, gratitude, and spiritual awareness in their hearts move through all three stages smoothly and joyfully. This is why Cayce consistently emphasized the importance of spiritual preparation during physical life. In verified readings from the ARE archives, he explained that regular meditation, prayer, and service to others create what he called spiritual momentum that carries the soul gracefully through the death transition. Here's the bottom line that every person needs to understand. According to Edgar Cayce's extensive documented work, those first 15 minutes after death are not a time of judgment or punishment, but rather a period of incredible opportunity for spiritual growth and conscious choice-making. The soul that has prepared itself through spiritual development experiences death as the ultimate liberation. In one of his most profound readings archived at Virginia Beach, Cayce described death as returning home after a long journey. The soul recognizes its true nature as an eternal being of light and love, temporarily having a physical experience. The 15 minutes after death are simply the bridge between one state of consciousness and another. According to Cayce's documented findings, understanding these principles can transform your entire relationship with death. Instead of fearing the unknown, you can approach the end of physical life with confidence, knowing that consciousness continues and that you'll maintain your individual identity. while gaining access to infinite wisdom and love. But here's what makes this information even more powerful. Cayce's readings suggest that souls who die with this understanding often return to help other souls navigate their own transitions. Death becomes not an ending, but a graduation to expanded service and consciousness. The Sleeping Prophet's work reveals that these 15 minutes are filled with more beauty, love, and understanding than most people experience in an entire physical lifetime. It's a time of reunion with loved ones, recognition of life's deeper purposes, and conscious choice about the soul's next phase of eternal development. But wait, there's something absolutely mind-blowing that Cayce discovered about how these 15 minutes connect to your current life right now. In documented readings from his work in Virginia Beach, the Sleeping Prophet revealed that souls who are approaching death often begin receiving what he called preparatory visions, weeks or even months before their physical transition. According to verified cases in the ARE archives, dying individuals frequently report visits from deceased relatives, prophetic dreams, and sudden spiritual insights that help prepare their consciousness for the upcoming transition. Cayce explained that these experiences aren't hallucinations. They're actually the soul beginning to tune into the frequencies it will fully access during those crucial 15 minutes after death. Here's what this means for everyone watching this video. If you've ever had dreams about deceased loved ones, sudden spiritual awakenings, or unexplained moments of profound peace, according to Cayce's work, your soul might be naturally preparing you for your own eventual transition. These experiences serve as practice runs for consciousness expansion. But here's the part that will absolutely blow your mind. In readings from the 1940s, Cayce revealed that advanced souls sometimes choose to experience what he called conscious dying. These individuals maintain full awareness throughout the entire death process, making deliberate choices at each stage instead of moving through the transition unconsciously. According to documented cases, people who achieved this level of conscious dying reported that the 15 minutes after physical death felt like hours of the most profound spiritual education they had ever received. They described learning universal laws, understanding their life's true purpose, and receiving detailed guidance about their next phase of existence. Now here's something that connects directly to modern near-death experience research. Long before scientists began studying NDEs, Cayce was documenting cases of people who returned from clinical death with detailed memories of those first 15 minutes. In verified readings from the 1930s, he explained that some souls are given the choice to return to physical life during this critical window. But wait, there's an even more incredible aspect to this phenomenon. According to Cayce's documented work, souls who return from those 15 minutes often come back with enhanced psychic abilities, deeper spiritual understanding, and a completely transformed perspective on life's priorities. They've glimpsed their true eternal nature and carry that wisdom back into physical existence. Here's what Cayce revealed about the connection between your current spiritual practices and your future death experience. In readings archived at the ARE headquarters, he consistently emphasized that daily meditation creates what he called spiritual muscle memory. When the moment of death arrives, souls who have practiced regularly moving their consciousness beyond the physical body navigate the transition with remarkable ease. According to his documented findings, people who pray regularly, study spiritual principles, and serve others selflessly actually begin experiencing mini versions of the death transition during deep meditation or prayer. They're unknowingly training their consciousness for the ultimate expansion that occurs in those 15 minutes after death. But here's the most shocking revelation from Cayce's work about these 15 minutes. In one of his most profound readings from the late 1930s, he described how some advanced souls use this transition period not just for their own spiritual development, but as an opportunity to help other souls who might be struggling with their own crossing over. This creates what Cayce called spiritual rescue work, where newly deceased souls who navigate their 15 minutes successfully immediately turn their attention to assisting others who might be confused or frightened by the transition process. According to archived readings, this service work begins within minutes of a soul's own successful crossing. Now here's something that will change how you think about grief and loss forever. According to Cayce's extensive documented work, Deceased loved ones remain accessible to living family members for much longer than those initial 15 minutes. In verified readings from throughout his career, he explained that souls who successfully transition maintain the ability to communicate with and guide their loved ones still in physical form. But the quality and clarity of this ongoing connection depends heavily on how well the soul navigated those crucial first 15 minutes after death. Souls who moved through the 3 stages, consciously and successfully, become powerful spiritual guides for their surviving family members, able to offer protection, guidance, and comfort from the other side. Here's the practical application that every viewer needs to understand. Based on Cayce's documented readings, you can begin preparing for your own 15-minute transition right now through specific spiritual practices. Regular meditation, daily prayer, acts of selfless service, and study of universal spiritual principles all contribute to what he called soul development. According to his work archived in Virginia Beach, souls who engage in these practices during physical life report that their death experience feels familiar rather than foreign. The expansion of consciousness that occurs in those 15 minutes becomes a natural progression rather than a shocking leap into the unknown. But wait, there's one final revelation from Cayce's work that ties everything together. In his most advanced readings about death and consciousness, the sleeping prophet revealed that those 15 minutes after death are actually a preview of humanity's collective spiritual evolution. As more souls learn to navigate this transition consciously, they contribute to raising the overall spiritual vibration of human consciousness. This means that by preparing yourself for conscious dying, you're not just ensuring your own smooth transition, you're actually contributing to the spiritual awakening of all humanity. According to Cayce's vision, documented in readings from the 1940s, there will come a time when conscious dying becomes the norm rather than the exception, transforming death from humanity's greatest fear into its most celebrated spiritual achievement. If this information has opened your mind to new possibilities about consciousness and death, make sure to subscribe for more insights from Edgar Cayce's remarkable documented work. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this life-changing information about what really happens when we cross over to the other side. The knowledge contained in Cayce's readings can transform not just how we think about death, but how we choose to live each day of our physical existence, knowing that every spiritual practice we engage in today is preparation for the most important 15 minutes of our eternal journey. This preparation stage involves careful planning and consultation with what Cayce called the Council of Souls, or advanced spiritual guides. In one reading, he described these councils as groups of highly evolved souls who have completed their earthly sojourns and now serve to guide others in their spiritual development. These councils operate under divine law and help souls make wise choices about their next incarnation based on spiritual need rather than personal preference. Together with these counselors, souls review their current development, identify areas needing growth or healing, and select circumstances for the next incarnation that will best serve their evolution. Another reading provides extensive detail about this planning process. The soul, in consultation with its guides, examines what has been learned and what remains to be mastered. They consider which earthly experiences would best provide opportunities to develop needed spiritual qualities, such as patience, compassion, forgiveness, or humility. Cayce emphasized that souls actively participate in choosing their next life circumstances, though not always in ways that human personality would prefer. In one reading, he explained, "The soul chooses not for comfort or ease, but for maximum spiritual growth. A soul needing to develop patience might choose a life filled with delays and obstacles. One needing to learn compassion might choose to experience suffering or to care for others who suffer. This includes selecting parents, cultural environment, historical period, and even physical characteristics that will provide optimal opportunities for growth." Another reading describes how souls consider the karmic connections they have with potential parents. Often souls choose to incarnate with others they have known in previous lives, either to heal relationships that were damaged or to continue working together on shared spiritual goals. The readings describe how souls often choose to reincarnate with groups they've known in previous lifetimes. In one reading, Cayce explained that soul groups, collections of souls who have interacted across multiple incarnations, often plan their returns together, taking on different family roles and relationships to provide mutual learning opportunities. A soul who was a parent in one life might return as a child to a former child, or enemies in one life might return as siblings to learn forgiveness and cooperation. This preparation stage also involves the soul reviewing spiritual laws and principles it needs to remember and apply in physical existence. Another reading describes memory banks, where souls store the wisdom they've gained in spiritual realms. While conscious memory of these teachings may fade after birth, they remain embedded in the soul's deeper awareness and can be accessed through prayer, meditation, and spiritual seeking. Some souls require extensive preparation, particularly if they're planning to incarnate into challenging circumstances or take on significant spiritual responsibilities. In one reading, Cayce described souls who spend long periods in training academies, where they develop specific abilities they'll need in their coming incarnation. A soul planning to serve as a healer might study energy manipulation, while one destined for spiritual teaching might develop communication and wisdom abilities. The readings also describe how souls sometimes choose difficult incarnations, specifically to balance previous negative actions. This isn't punishment imposed from outside, but the soul's own recognition of spiritual debt that needs balancing. In another reading, Cayce explained, if a soul caused suffering to others in a previous life, it may choose to experience similar suffering to truly understand the consequences of its actions and develop compassion for those it harmed. Cayce described how the preparation process includes what he called incarnation blueprints, detailed plans that outline the soul's major learning objectives, key relationships, and significant challenges for the coming lifetime. One reading explains that these blueprints are flexible rather than fixed. The soul plans general themes and major learning opportunities, but maintains free will to choose how to respond to these experiences. The blueprint provides structure, but the soul's choices determine the actual outcome. The timing of reincarnation varies greatly according to Cayce's readings. In another reading, he explained that souls don't reincarnate on a fixed schedule, but return when conditions are optimal for their growth. Some souls return relatively quickly, drawn by strong desires or urgent learning needs. Others may spend extensive periods in spiritual realms, either because they need healing, have service work to complete, or because the optimal circumstances for their next incarnation haven't yet manifested on Earth. The preparation stage also involves what Cayce called energy adjustment, the gradual modification of the soul's vibration to match the denser frequencies of physical existence. One reading describes this process. The soul must lower its vibrational rate slowly and carefully to avoid shock when entering dense matter. This adjustment process can take considerable time and is overseen by specialists who ensure the soul's energy patterns remain intact during the transition. Advanced souls often spend extensive time in preparation because they're planning incarnations involving significant service to humanity. In another reading, Cayce described how some souls prepare for lifetimes as spiritual teachers, healers, or leaders by studying with master teachers and developing specific abilities they'll need. These preparation periods might span centuries of Earth time as the soul develops wisdom and capabilities for its coming mission. The readings indicate that preparation includes selecting not only major life circumstances, but also seemingly minor details that will provide important learning opportunities. One reading mentions how souls might choose specific talents, interests, or even health challenges that will guide them toward their planned spiritual development. A soul planning to learn about service might choose a physical limitation that requires dependence on others, while one needing to develop strength might choose circumstances requiring unusual courage and perseverance. Stage 6. Edgar Cayce and the Soul's Journey, a spiritual perspective on life, death, and reincarnation. Throughout human history, one question has persisted across all cultures and civilizations. What happens to our consciousness after physical death? This universal inquiry found a unique perspective through the work of Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet. who for over 4 decades provided thousands of psychic readings on various topics, including the nature of the soul and its journey beyond earthly life. Edgar Cayce, 1877-1945, was one of the most documented psychics in modern history. His readings, psychic consultations given while in a trance state, were meticulously recorded and today form one of the largest collections of psychic material ever compiled. Unlike many esoteric traditions that keep their teachings secret, Cayce's work was extensively documented and studied, offering a consistent perspective on fundamental spiritual questions. In Cayce's readings about life after death, we find not a single moment of transition, but rather what he described as a continuous journey of consciousness. According to his teachings, the soul follows patterns and stages that reflect universal spiritual laws. While different readings emphasized various aspects of this journey, several consistent themes emerge that can help us understand what Cayce taught about the soul's experience after physical death. If you've ever wondered about the nature of consciousness beyond physical life, or if you're seeking comfort regarding loved ones who have passed, Cayce's perspective offers both insight and hope. His teachings suggest that death is not an ending, but a transformation, a doorway into expanded awareness and continued growth. Before we explore these teachings in detail, it's important to understand that Cayce's readings present spiritual perspectives rather than scientific facts. They offer one viewpoint among many about life's greatest mysteries. Whether you approach these ideas as literal truth, metaphorical wisdom, or simply food for thought, they contain profound insights about how we might live more consciously in preparation for whatever lies beyond. Central to understanding Cayce's perspective on the afterlife is his fundamental teaching that mind is the builder. This wasn't merely a phrase about earthly existence. According to Cayce, it represents a universal law that continues beyond physical death. The readings consistently emphasized that consciousness, with all its patterns of thought, emotion, and belief, survives the transition we call death. In Cayce's view, the soul doesn't undergo a sudden transformation at the moment of death. Instead, it carries forward the mental and emotional patterns developed during physical life. This perspective suggests that preparation for the afterlife happens not through rituals or last-minute conversions, but through the daily cultivation of consciousness during our earthly existence. The readings describe how our thoughts, attitudes, and spiritual development shape not only our current experience but also our condition in the spiritual realms. This isn't presented as judgment from an external deity, but as a natural consequence of spiritual law. The idea that consciousness creates experience both in physical and non-physical dimensions. When Edgar Cayce spoke about the journey of consciousness after death, he described it as following natural patterns and stages. While the specific details varied across different readings, several consistent phases emerge from his extensive body of work. Understanding these phases, according to Cayce, helps us comprehend not only what may await us after death, but also how our current choices and mental states are already shaping that future experience. Cayce often compared death to falling asleep, not in the sense of unconsciousness, but in the gentle transition from one state of awareness to another. He emphasized that for those who have lived with spiritual awareness and inner peace, the transition is smooth and natural. For those carrying fear, resentment, or strong material attachments, the passage may involve more difficulty, not as punishment, but as the natural result of resistance to spiritual law. The readings suggest that loved ones who have passed before often assist in this transition. Cayce described how souls rarely make this passage entirely alone. There are always helping presences, whether recognized or not, who guide and comfort the departing consciousness. This aspect of his teachings has brought comfort to many who grieve, suggesting that death is not abandonment, but reunion with those who have gone before. What makes Cayce's perspective unique is its practical nature. Rather than abstract theological concepts, his readings offer detailed descriptions of what consciousness experiences as it moves through various stages of existence beyond physical life. These descriptions, drawn from thousands of individual readings, present a coherent view of the afterlife as an active, purposeful continuation of the soul's development. The spiritual dimensions Cayce described are not static realms of eternal reward or punishment, but dynamic environments where consciousness continues to grow, learn, and serve. According to his readings, the soul remains active between earthly incarnations, engaging in various forms of learning, healing, and service that prepare it for future growth opportunities. One of the most profound aspects of Cayce's teachings is the emphasis on personal responsibility. The readings consistently indicate that each soul creates its own experience through the power of consciousness. This places both the challenge and the hope squarely with the individual. We are not victims of arbitrary divine judgment, but active participants in shaping our eternal destiny through our daily choices and inner development. The concept of reincarnation appears throughout Cayce's work, not as endless repetition, but as purposeful return to physical existence for continued learning and service. According to the readings, souls don't reincarnate randomly, but choose circumstances that best serve their spiritual development and the opportunity to balance previous actions through love and service. This perspective transforms how we might view our current life circumstances. Challenges, relationships, and opportunities are not mere coincidences, but carefully chosen experiences designed to advance the soul's growth. This doesn't mean we're trapped by fate, but rather that we're active participants in a cosmic curriculum designed for our highest development. Cayce's readings also address the question of time in spiritual dimensions. According to his perspective, consciousness in the afterlife is not bound by linear time as we experience it in physical life. This allows for what he described as instantaneous understanding and experience that transcends the gradual learning process we know on Earth. The healing aspect of the afterlife features prominently in Cayce's descriptions. He spoke of spiritual hospitals or restoration centers where souls wounded by trauma, hatred, or destructive patterns receive healing and rehabilitation. This reinforces the idea that no soul is ever beyond hope or help, that divine mercy provides opportunities for healing and renewal regardless of past mistakes or suffering. Understanding these general principles provides the foundation for exploring what Cayce described as the specific stages or phases of the soul's journey after physical death. While these stages shouldn't be viewed as rigid categories, they offer a framework for understanding the natural progression of consciousness as it adapts to and grows within spiritual dimensions. Stage 1. The moment of separation. According to Cayce's readings, the first stage begins with what he described as the loosening of the silver cord, the energetic connection between the physical body and the soul. This separation is portrayed not as a violent rupture, but as a gentle release, often compared to the natural process of falling asleep. In one of his readings, Cayce explained, "The silver cord is broken. That cord through which life, as manifested in the physical consciousness, has its connection with soul and spirit." He described this cord as extending from the brain through what he called the Leyden gland, likely referring to the pineal gland, connecting the physical consciousness to the soul body. The breaking of this cord doesn't happen instantly, but rather gradually, like a rope slowly unraveling strand by strand. The reading suggests that this initial separation can vary greatly depending on the individual's spiritual condition and circumstances of death. In one reading, Cayce described how those who have lived with spiritual ideals experience what he called a glorious transition, where the soul slips away as gently as the morning mist rises from the water. For those who have developed strong spiritual foundations through prayer, meditation, and service to others, the separation feels natural and peaceful. However, for others, particularly those who die suddenly or who have strong attachments to physical life, the process may involve more confusion or resistance. Cayce explained in another reading that souls who are earthbound by desires, appetites, or unfulfilled longings may struggle against the separation, creating what he described as a wrestling between the physical and spiritual bodies. This resistance doesn't prevent the transition, but can make it more difficult and prolonged. During this stage, Cayce described how consciousness may hover between two states of awareness, still sensing the physical environment while beginning to perceive spiritual dimensions. In several readings, he mentioned that souls often report being able to see their physical body and observe the reactions of those around them, while simultaneously becoming aware of spiritual presences and dimensions previously invisible. This dual awareness can last from moments to several days, depending on the soul's preparedness and circumstances. The readings indicate that the soul's state of mind at the moment of death significantly influences this initial stage. In one reading, Cayce emphasized that what the soul has built in its mental and spiritual self determines the ease or difficulty of this transition. Fear, regret, or desperate clinging to physical life can create what he called etheric storms that make the separation turbulent and confusing. Conversely, trust, peace, and spiritual surrender create what he described as harmonious vibrations that facilitate a smoother passage. Cayce also described how loved ones who have passed before often become present during this stage, offering comfort and guidance to the departing soul. In another reading, he explained that these helping souls stand ready to assist and often appear to the departing consciousness in forms they would recognize and find comforting. Sometimes they appear as they were in physical life, other times in more radiant spiritual forms. These presences serve as bridges between the physical and spiritual worlds, helping ease the transition. The readings also mention that the soul's beliefs about death significantly impact this stage. Those who believe death is final may struggle more with the transition, while those who understand it as a doorway to continued existence move through more easily. Cayce emphasized in one reading that preparation should include not just moral and spiritual development, but also proper understanding of death as a natural spiritual process. He recommended studying spiritual teachings about the afterlife and practicing meditation to become familiar with expanded states of consciousness. Interestingly, Cayce described how the physical body itself responds during this separation process. In one reading, he mentioned that the soul gradually withdraws from the extremities first, hands and feet, then progressively from other organs, with the final connection being through the brain and nervous system. This explains why some people report feeling cold or numb in their hands and feet as death approaches, and why consciousness often remains clear until the very end. The timing of this separation process varies considerably according to the readings. For some, particularly those ready spiritually, it can happen quickly and peacefully. For others, especially those with strong earthly attachments or unresolved issues, the process may extend over several days. Cayce explained that the soul doesn't fully separate until it's ready to let go of physical concerns and accept its spiritual destiny. Stage 2. The period of rest and adjustment. Following the initial separation, Cayce described what he often called a period of sleep or rest. This isn't unconsciousness in the ordinary sense, but rather a state of adjustment where the soul acclimates to its new condition. Just as a newborn requires time to adapt to physical existence, the newly departed soul needs time to orient itself to spiritual reality. In one reading, Cayce explained this stage in detail. The soul entity passes through that experience as a babe passes into what we call sleep, that condition wherein the physical consciousness is laid aside and the soul communes with those influences that are ever present but not ordinarily aware to the physical consciousness. This spiritual sleep serves multiple purposes, functioning as both rest and preparation for the expanded awareness that follows. The duration of this rest period varies according to Cayce's readings, and he provided specific insights about what determines this timing. In another reading, he explained that souls who lived with strong spiritual ideals and understanding awaken relatively quickly, sometimes within what would be equivalent to days or weeks in earthly time. However, those who died suddenly, violently, or while carrying heavy emotional burdens may remain in this restful state for much longer periods. Cayce described several factors that influence the length of this sleep period. Souls who died with unresolved guilt often require extended rest while healing energies work to dissolve these burdens. In one reading, he mentioned that those who lived primarily for material gain or physical pleasures need more time to adjust to a reality where such things don't exist. Conversely, those who developed strong prayer lives and meditation practices during earthly existence adapt more quickly to spiritual consciousness. During this stage, the soul is surrounded by what Cayce called healing forces that work to restore balance and clarity. In another reading, he described these as emanations of divine love that flow from higher spiritual beings who specialize in assisting newly departed souls. These healing energies work to dissolve fear, guilt, and confusion, while strengthening the soul's natural spiritual radiance. The readings reveal that this period also serves to gradually dissolve the soul's attachment to physical sensations and material concerns. Cayce explained in one reading that the soul must learn to function without the 5 physical senses and instead develop what he called spiritual perception. This is a fundamental shift, from receiving information through eyes, ears, and touch to directly knowing through consciousness itself. Some souls use this rest period to resolve internal conflicts or heal emotional wounds that were carried from earthly life. In another reading, Cayce described how souls often review and process traumatic experiences during this sleep, with the assistance of what he called healing angels, or advanced souls who specialize in emotional restoration. The peaceful environment and absence of physical stress allow for deep healing that wouldn't be possible while incarnated. Cayce also explained that during this rest period, the soul begins to remember its true nature and purpose. In one reading, he described how earthly personality gradually gives way to soul identity, the eternal self that has existed through multiple incarnations. This remembering process can be gradual and gentle for prepared souls, or more dramatic for those who lived primarily through ego consciousness. The readings describe different types of rest environments tailored to individual needs. Some souls rest in what Cayce called gardens of peace, beautiful natural settings that provide comfort and tranquility. Others find themselves in temple-like structures where gentle instruction begins even during the rest period. In another reading, he mentioned that souls often rest near loved ones who passed before, creating family groupings that support mutual healing and adjustment. According to Cayce, no soul remains in this state indefinitely. Awakening always comes, though timing varies with individual needs. He explained in one reading that higher spiritual beings monitor each soul's progress and gently encourage awakening when the time is right. This awakening isn't forced, but occurs naturally as the soul completes its adjustment and becomes ready for more active spiritual experiences. The transition from this rest period to full spiritual awakening is described as gradual and beautiful. In another reading, Cayce compared it to dawn breaking, a slow, gentle increase in awareness and perception until the soul suddenly realizes it's fully conscious in a new realm of existence. This awakening marks the end of the adjustment period and the beginning of active engagement with spiritual realities. Stage 3. Awakening and attraction to spiritual spheres. When the soul awakens from its period of rest, Cayce described how it begins to perceive the spiritual dimensions around it. These aren't vague, ethereal realms, but substantial realities with their own characteristics and inhabitants. The key principle governing this stage is what Cayce consistently described as the law of attraction, like attracts like. In one of his readings, Cayce provided detailed descriptions of this awakening process. As the soul entity awakens to the consciousness of its spiritual self, it finds itself drawn by the very nature of its being to that sphere, that realm, that condition which is in accord with what it has built within itself during its sojourns in the earth. This attraction operates through what he called spiritual magnetism, an automatic natural force that draws similar vibrations together. The readings describe multiple spiritual spheres or planes, each with distinct characteristics corresponding to different levels of spiritual development. Cayce mentioned in one reading that there are many mansions in the spiritual realm, referencing the biblical passage while explaining that these represent actual dimensional spaces where souls of similar development congregate and continue their growth. For souls whose consciousness has been developed through love, service, and spiritual growth, this attraction leads to what Cayce called realms of light. In another reading, he described these environments as filled with colors beyond earthly imagination and music that is the harmony of the spheres themselves. These realms are populated by souls who radiate love and engage in activities of learning, creating, and serving others. Cayce provided specific details about these higher realms in various readings. In one reading, he described temples of wisdom, where souls study universal laws under the guidance of master teachers. He mentioned halls of healing, where souls learn to work with spiritual energies to assist others, and gardens of beauty, where souls engage in creative activities that express divine harmony through what earthly minds might recognize as art, music, and poetry. Conversely, souls burdened by hatred, selfishness, or destructive patterns find themselves attracted to what Cayce called the borderland, or lower spheres. These aren't places of eternal punishment, but rather environments that reflect the soul's inner condition and provide opportunities for recognition and eventual healing of negative patterns. In one reading, he described these as grey realms, where souls struggle with the very attitudes and desires that drew them there. These lower spheres serve a corrective purpose, according to Cayce's readings. In another reading, he explained that souls in these conditions eventually become dissatisfied with their environment and begin to seek something better. This seeking creates the motivation for growth and change. Advanced souls from higher realms often work as counselors and guides in these areas, helping trapped souls recognize their condition and choose differently. Cayce emphasized that this attraction is not imposed by external judgment, but operates as a natural law of spiritual existence. In one reading, he explained, "The soul finds itself where its consciousness has prepared a place for it. This is not judgment from without, but the natural consequence of spiritual law that consciousness creates experience." The soul cannot hide from itself in these dimensions. Its true nature becomes evident and shapes its immediate environment. The readings describe how souls often experience surprise or shock when they first recognize their environment, especially if it doesn't match their earthly self-image. In another reading, Cayce mentioned that souls who considered themselves religious or moral during earthly life, but harbored prejudice, judgment, or spiritual pride, might find themselves in less elevated spheres than expected. Conversely, souls who lived with genuine love and service, regardless of their religious affiliation or lack thereof, gravitate toward higher realms. Within these spheres, souls encounter others of similar development, creating communities of consciousness that support mutual growth and understanding. Cayce described in one reading how souls often reunite with those they've known in previous lifetimes, continuing relationships and working together on shared spiritual goals. These reunions aren't always pleasant. Souls may encounter those they harmed in past lives, creating opportunities for forgiveness and healing. The law of attraction in spiritual realms also operates on a more subtle level, according to Cayce's readings. In another reading, he explained that souls are drawn not only to general spheres, but to specific areas within those spheres that match their particular interests and needs. A soul with musical inclinations might find itself in areas where celestial harmony is studied and practiced, while one drawn to healing might gravitate toward regions where restorative arts are taught and applied. Cayce also described how the environment itself responds to the collective consciousness of its inhabitants. In one reading, he mentioned that in higher spheres the thoughts and emotions of loving souls create increasingly beautiful and harmonious surroundings, while in lower spheres, negative mental patterns manifest as restrictive or unpleasant conditions. This creates a feedback loop where environment and consciousness mutually influence each other. The transition between spheres is possible according to the readings, but it requires genuine transformation of consciousness. In another reading, Cayce explained that souls cannot simply decide to move to a higher sphere. They must actually develop the spiritual qualities that would naturally attract them there. This development often happens through service to other souls in lower conditions, which builds the love and compassion necessary for spiritual advancement. Stage 4. The Life Review. One of the most consistently described experiences in Cayce's readings is what he called the Life Review, a comprehensive examination of the soul's recent earthly existence. This review is not conducted by external judges, but is guided by the soul's own higher self, that aspect of consciousness that maintains clear spiritual perspective beyond ego and illusion. According to Cayce, this review involves more than simple memory recall. In one reading, he described it as a reliving of every experience, every thought, every action from the perspective of universal law. The soul actually re-experiences its life from multiple perspectives, feeling not only its own experiences, but also the effects of its actions on others. Every thought, word, and deed is examined in the light of spiritual truth, revealing the true impact of the soul's choices. This process can be profoundly humbling for souls who caused harm to others, as they directly experience the pain they inflicted. In another reading, Cayce explained, "As the entity reviews its life, it feels within itself all that it gave to others, the joys and the sorrows, the help and the hurt. There is no hiding from the self in this examination. Conversely, it can be deeply affirming for those who lived with compassion and service, as they feel the positive effects they created rippling through other lives." The review is thorough and honest, leaving no room for self-deception or rationalization. Cayce described in one reading how souls often express amazement at seeing their earthly life from this expanded perspective. The entity sees how small actions created great effects, how seemingly insignificant moments of kindness brought healing to others, and how thoughtless words or deeds created suffering that spread far beyond what was imagined. Cayce emphasized that this life review is not about condemnation, but about understanding and learning. In another reading, he explained, "The purpose is not punishment, but instruction. The soul must understand the consequences of free will choices in order to make better choices in future opportunities for growth. The soul sees clearly what it failed to recognize during earthly life, the interconnectedness of all actions, and the responsibility that comes with free will." The readings suggest that this review is conducted in the presence of what Cayce called the recording angels, or keepers of the records, advanced spiritual beings who help the soul process and understand its experiences. In one reading, he described these entities as beings of pure love who have transcended judgment and serve only to illuminate truth and assist understanding. These guides don't judge, but rather help illuminate the spiritual lessons embedded in earthly experiences. During this process, the soul encounters what Cayce referred to as the Book of Life. Not a literal book, but the complete energetic record of every soul's existence across all incarnations. In another reading, he explained that this record is maintained in what he called the Akashic Records, a cosmic library where every thought, action, and experience is permanently stored and can be accessed for learning and growth. For many souls, the life review reveals the need for forgiveness, both giving and receiving. Cayce described in one reading how souls often discover that people they thought had wronged them were actually providing necessary learning experiences, while realizing they themselves had created harm through thoughtlessness or selfishness. This recognition creates powerful motivation for healing relationships in future incarnations. The review also reveals patterns that may have operated below conscious awareness during earthly life. In another reading, Cayce described how souls see recurring themes across their recent lifetime, perhaps a pattern of avoiding responsibility, or a tendency toward jealousy, or a habit of seeking control over others. These patterns become visible as threads running through many different situations and relationships. Cayce explained that the emotional intensity of this review varies depending on how the soul lived. In one reading, he noted that souls who practiced regular self-examination during earthly life experienced the review as largely confirmation of what they already knew about themselves. However, souls who avoided self-reflection or lived largely unconsciously may find the experience overwhelming, requiring assistance from spiritual counselors to process the revelations. The review process also illuminates the soul's spiritual growth during the recent lifetime. Cayce described in another reading how souls can see exactly when and how they made progress, moments when they chose love over fear, service over selfishness, forgiveness over resentment. These moments shine like lights in the review, showing the soul its authentic spiritual achievements. Interestingly, the readings indicate that this review includes not only actions and their consequences, but also missed opportunities. In one reading, Cayce mentioned that souls see the roads not taken, moments when they could have chosen differently, situations where they could have helped others or grown spiritually, but failed to recognize the opportunity. This isn't shown to create regret, but to increase awareness for future choices. The life review concludes with what Cayce called the weighing, not a judgment imposed from outside, but the soul's own recognition of its spiritual condition based on the complete evidence of its recent life. In another reading, he explained that this weighing determines the soul's next steps, whether it needs healing, further learning, service opportunities, or preparation for another incarnation. Stage 5. Activity in spiritual realms. Following the life review, souls don't remain idle but engage in various forms of activity within the spiritual dimensions. Cayce's descriptions of these activities vary widely, reflecting the diverse needs and development levels of different souls, but all serve the purpose of continued growth and service. Some souls remain relatively close to the earth plane, drawn by unfinished business or concern for loved ones still in physical life. In one reading, Cayce described these as earthbound entities who haven't fully accepted their transition and continue to attempt communication with the physical world. However, he distinguished between souls who are trapped by negative attachments and those who choose to remain near Earth for constructive purposes, such as guiding and protecting family members. These earthbound souls may attempt to communicate with or assist those on Earth, though their ability to do so depends on various factors. In another reading, Cayce explained that successful communication requires both the departed soul's development of spiritual communication abilities and the living person's receptivity and sensitivity. He described how some souls learn to influence dreams, inspire sudden insights, or create synchronistic events to convey messages to loved ones. Other souls move into what Cayce described as realms of learning or universities of the soul. In one reading, he provided detailed descriptions of these educational environments. There are institutions of learning where souls study the laws of creation, the nature of divine love, and the principles governing spiritual evolution. These schools are more real and substantial than earthly universities, for learning happens through direct knowing rather than intellectual study. These educational realms operate according to different principles than earthly learning. In another reading, Cayce explained that souls absorb knowledge directly through consciousness rather than through reading or listening. Advanced teacher souls share their understanding through what he called thought transmission, a form of communication where complete concepts and experiences are shared instantaneously. Students in these schools might study the mathematics of creation, the harmony of celestial music, or the healing properties of divine light. Cayce also described realms of service, where souls assist in various forms of healing and guidance work. In one reading, he mentioned souls who specialize in helping newly departed entities adjust to spiritual existence, serving as counselors and guides for those struggling with the transition. Other souls work with those still on Earth by providing inspiration and subtle guidance, often operating through what humans perceive as intuition or sudden insights. Particularly significant in Cayce's descriptions are what he called healing centers or hospitals of the soul. Another reading provides extensive detail about these facilities. There are realms dedicated entirely to the restoration of souls damaged by trauma, violence, hatred, or despair. These centers are staffed by master healers who work with pure spiritual energy to repair and restore the soul's natural radiance and harmony. This healing work addresses not only damage from the recent lifetime, but also accumulated wounds from multiple incarnations. The healing process in these centers involves what Cayce called light therapy, the application of divine energies that dissolve negative patterns and restore spiritual wholeness. In one reading, he described how souls undergoing this healing are immersed in pools of living light that penetrate every aspect of their being, dissolving fear, guilt, anger, and despair while strengthening their connection to divine love. The readings describe how souls may move between different types of activity as their needs and development change. Some alternate between learning and service, while others focus intensively on healing work, either for themselves or others. In another reading, Cayce explained that this variety serves the soul's need for balanced development. As a soul grows in one area, it naturally seeks to express that growth through service, which then reveals new areas needing development. Throughout these activities, souls continue to interact with others they've known in various lifetimes, working together on shared spiritual goals and healing relationships that may have been damaged in physical existence. One reading describes how soul groups, collections of souls who have interacted across multiple lifetimes, often work together in spiritual realms, supporting each other's growth and preparing for future incarnations together. Cayce described specialized service roles that some souls undertake. In another reading, he mentioned guardian souls who take responsibility for watching over specific individuals or families on Earth, providing protection and guidance. Other souls become inspirational agents who work to inspire creativity, scientific discovery, or spiritual awakening in those still incarnated. Some serve as intercession souls who help transmit prayers and spiritual requests between earthly and divine realms. The concept of spiritual creativity features prominently in these descriptions. One reading explains how souls in higher realms engage in divine artistry, creating beauty through pure thought and spiritual energy. These creations aren't art as humans understand it, but expressions of spiritual truth that can inspire and uplift other souls. Music in these realms consists of harmonies that express cosmic principles, while visual arts manifest the very essence of divine qualities like love, joy, and peace. Cayce also described souls who work in what he called laboratories of consciousness, realms where advanced souls study the mechanisms of creation itself. In another reading, he mentioned souls who investigate the building blocks of reality and learn to work with the fundamental forces that shape both spiritual and physical worlds. This knowledge prepares them for eventual roles as co-creators with divine intelligence. The duration of activity in these realms varies enormously according to the readings. Some souls spend relatively brief periods before choosing to reincarnate, while others may engage in spiritual realm activities for centuries or even millennia of Earth time. In one reading, Cayce explained that time itself operates differently in spiritual dimensions, with some souls accomplishing vast amounts of learning and service in what seems like brief periods, while others take extensive time to heal or develop specific spiritual qualities. Stage 6. Preparation for return. Eventually, most souls begin preparation for return to physical existence. According to Cayce's readings, reincarnation is not a punishment or endless cycle, but a purposeful return designed to provide specific learning opportunities that advance the soul's spiritual development. This preparation stage involves careful planning and consultation with what Cayce called the Council of Souls, or advanced spiritual guides. In one reading, he described these councils as groups of highly evolved souls who have completed their earthly sojourns and now serve to guide others in their spiritual development. These councils operate under divine law and help souls make wise choices about their next incarnation based on spiritual need rather than personal preference. Together with these counselors, souls review their current development, identify areas needing growth or healing, and select circumstances for the next incarnation that will best serve their evolution. Another reading provides extensive detail about this planning process. The soul, in consultation with its guides, examines what has been learned and what remains to be mastered. They consider which earthly experiences would best provide opportunities to develop needed spiritual qualities, such as patience, compassion, forgiveness, or humility. Cayce emphasized that souls actively participate in choosing their next life circumstances, though not always in ways that human personality would prefer. In one reading, he explained, "The soul chooses not for comfort or ease, but for maximum spiritual growth. A soul needing to develop patience might choose a life filled with delays and obstacles. One needing to learn compassion might choose to experience suffering or to care for others who suffer. This includes selecting parents, cultural environment, historical period, and even physical characteristics that will provide optimal opportunities for growth." Another reading describes how souls consider the karmic connections they have with potential parents. Often souls choose to incarnate with others they have known in previous lives, either to heal relationships that were damaged or to continue working together on shared spiritual goals. The readings describe how souls often choose to reincarnate with groups they've known in previous lifetimes. In one reading, Cayce explained that soul groups, collections of souls who have interacted across multiple incarnations, often plan their returns together, taking on different family roles and relationships to provide mutual learning opportunities. A soul who was a parent in one life might return as a child to a former child, or enemies in one life might return as siblings to learn forgiveness and cooperation. This preparation stage also involves the soul reviewing spiritual laws and principles it needs to remember and apply in physical existence. Another reading describes memory banks, where souls store the wisdom they've gained in spiritual realms. While conscious memory of these teachings may fade after birth, they remain embedded in the soul's deeper awareness and can be accessed through prayer, meditation, and spiritual seeking. Some souls require extensive preparation, particularly if they're planning to incarnate into challenging circumstances or take on significant spiritual responsibilities. In one reading, Cayce described souls who spend long periods in training academies, where they develop specific abilities they'll need in their coming incarnation. A soul planning to serve as a healer might study energy manipulation, while one destined for spiritual teaching might develop communication and wisdom abilities. The readings also describe how souls sometimes choose difficult incarnations, specifically to balance previous negative actions. This isn't punishment imposed from outside, but the soul's own recognition of spiritual debt that needs balancing. In another reading, Cayce explained, if a soul caused suffering to others in a previous life, it may choose to experience similar suffering to truly understand the consequences of its actions and develop compassion for those it harmed. Cayce described how the preparation process includes what he called incarnation blueprints, detailed plans that outline the soul's major learning objectives, key relationships, and significant challenges for the coming lifetime. One reading explains that these blueprints are flexible rather than fixed. The soul plans general themes and major learning opportunities, but maintains free will to choose how to respond to these experiences. The blueprint provides structure, but the soul's choices determine the actual outcome. The timing of reincarnation varies greatly according to Cayce's readings. In another reading, he explained that souls don't reincarnate on a fixed schedule, but return when conditions are optimal for their growth. Some souls return relatively quickly, drawn by strong desires or urgent learning needs. Others may spend extensive periods in spiritual realms, either because they need healing, have service work to complete, or because the optimal circumstances for their next incarnation haven't yet manifested on Earth. The preparation stage also involves what Cayce called energy adjustment, the gradual modification of the soul's vibration to match the denser frequencies of physical existence. One reading describes this process. The soul must lower its vibrational rate slowly and carefully to avoid shock when entering dense matter. This adjustment process can take considerable time and is overseen by specialists who ensure the soul's energy patterns remain intact during the transition. Advanced souls often spend extensive time in preparation because they're planning incarnations involving significant service to humanity. In another reading, Cayce described how some souls prepare for lifetimes as spiritual teachers, healers, or leaders by studying with master teachers and developing specific abilities they'll need. These preparation periods might span centuries of Earth time as the soul develops wisdom and capabilities for its coming mission. The readings indicate that preparation includes selecting not only major life circumstances, but also seemingly minor details that will provide important learning opportunities. One reading mentions how souls might choose specific talents, interests, or even health challenges that will guide them toward their planned spiritual development. A soul planning to learn about service might choose a physical limitation that requires dependence on others, while one needing to develop strength might choose circumstances requiring unusual courage and perseverance. Stage 7. The return to physical existence. The final stage in Cayce's description involves the soul's gradual return to physical existence. This isn't an abrupt entry into a new body, but a progressive process that begins long before birth and continues for some time after. According to the readings, the soul becomes magnetically attracted to its chosen parents before conception occurs. In one reading, Cayce described this attraction as operating through spiritual resonance. The soul is drawn to parents whose combined energies will provide the exact genetic, emotional, and environmental conditions needed for its planned development. This attraction isn't based on the parents' conscious worthiness, but on their ability to provide specific learning opportunities the soul requires. The soul hovers near the family, influenced by and influencing the energies of the household, sometimes for months or even years before conception. Another reading explains this preliminary connection. The soul that will incarnate often begins influencing the family unit long before physical conception, helping to create conditions that will support its coming growth. This influence may manifest as changes in the parent's spiritual interests, relationship dynamics, or life circumstances. At conception, the soul begins the complex process of merging with the developing physical form. Cayce described this in one reading as a gradual wedding of spirit and matter that requires careful coordination between the soul's energy and the developing body's capacity to hold that energy. This merger isn't instantaneous but occurs progressively as the physical form develops sufficient complexity to house consciousness. Throughout pregnancy, the connection strengthens as the soul adjusts to operating through dense physical matter once again. Another reading provides detailed information about this process. During gestation, the soul works to align its energy patterns with the developing nervous system. The physical brain and body are gradually prepared to serve as vehicles for the soul's expression, though this preparation continues long after birth. Cayce described how the soul's presence affects fetal development and how the developing body is shaped by the soul's energy patterns. In one reading, he explained that the soul's vibrations influence not only physical development, but also the formation of personality tendencies, natural talents, and even health patterns that will manifest throughout the lifetime. This suggests that many characteristics we consider genetic are actually influenced by the incoming soul's spiritual nature. The readings indicate that the soul doesn't maintain constant connection during pregnancy, but moves in and out of the developing body as conditions permit. Another reading describes this variable connection. The soul may be fully present during some periods of gestation and partially withdrawn during others, depending on the body's developmental stage and the soul's ability to function through increasingly dense matter. Birth represents a critical transition point, but not the completion of the soul's incarnation process. Cayce explained in one reading that birth is the soul's commitment point, the moment when it fully accepts responsibility for expression through physical form, though complete integration may take years to accomplish. The trauma of birth itself can temporarily disrupt the soul's connection, requiring a period of restabilization. The readings suggest that young children often retain closer connection to spiritual awareness, which gradually fades as they adapt to physical reality and develop ego consciousness. Another reading describes how children up to age 7 often display memories, abilities, or knowledge that cannot be explained through their current life experience, because their connection to their soul self remains relatively strong during these early years. This gradual forgetting is described as both necessary and merciful, allowing the soul to fully engage with its chosen life circumstances without being overwhelmed by memories of spiritual existence or past lifetimes. However, one reading explains that the deeper lessons and purposes remain embedded in the soul's unconscious awareness, guiding choices and development throughout the lifetime, even when not consciously remembered. Cayce emphasized that each return to physical existence represents a sacred opportunity and responsibility. In another reading, he stated, "Every incarnation is a privilege, a chance for the soul to work with divine creative forces in dense matter, to transform both itself and the world through love and service." The soul that returns brings gifts developed in spiritual realms and has the opportunity to manifest these gifts for the benefit of all. The cycle of death, spiritual development, and rebirth continues until the soul has mastered all lessons available through physical existence. One reading describes this graduation. When the soul has learned to consistently choose love over fear, service over selfishness, and wisdom over ignorance in all circumstances, it no longer requires incarnation for its development. It then moves on to higher forms of service in spiritual realms. However, Cayce noted that some highly developed souls choose to continue incarnating not for their own growth, but to serve humanity's spiritual evolution. Another reading explains, Master souls often return repeatedly to serve as teachers, healers, and guides for less developed souls. Their incarnations are acts of sacrifice and love, designed to help lift human consciousness toward divine realization. The process of return also involves what Cayce called karmic integration, the soul's acceptance of responsibility for balancing previous actions through love and service. One reading describes how the soul carries forward both the consequences of past choices and the wisdom gained from previous experiences, creating a foundation for continued growth and the opportunity to transform any negative patterns through conscious spiritual effort. Understanding this complete cycle from Cayce's perspective transforms how we might view both life and death. If our current existence is part of an eternal journey of growth and service, then every experience becomes meaningful, every choice carries weight, and every moment offers opportunity for spiritual advancement. Death becomes not an ending to fear, but a graduation to prepare for, and life becomes the sacred workshop where souls develop the love and wisdom that serve them throughout eternity. Understanding these 7 stages provides insight not only into what may await us after death, but also into how we might live more consciously now. If our thoughts and actions are shaping our future spiritual experience, then every moment becomes an opportunity to build a foundation of wisdom, love, and service that will serve us well in whatever lies beyond. Cayce's teachings suggest that preparation for these stages happens through the daily cultivation of spiritual awareness. Practices like meditation, prayer, study of spiritual principles, and service to others all contribute to developing the consciousness that will navigate spiritual dimensions with clarity and purpose. The emphasis throughout Cayce's work is on hope and opportunity, rather than fear and judgment. Death is presented not as an end to be dreaded, but as a transition to be prepared for with faith and wisdom. The spiritual realms are not alien territories, but the soul's true home, where it can continue the eternal journey of growth, learning, and service in increasingly expanded awareness. Most importantly, these teachings remind us that love is the fundamental force operating throughout all these stages. Love guides the soul through transition, shapes its experience in spiritual realms, and motivates its return to physical existence. By cultivating love in our current life, love for others, love for growth, love for truth, and love for the divine, we prepare ourselves for whatever stages of existence await us in the eternal journey of the soul. Whether we view these teachings as literal descriptions or symbolic wisdom, they offer profound insights into living with greater consciousness, compassion, and purpose. They remind us that our choices matter not only for this lifetime, but for the ongoing evolution of our eternal spiritual nature. In sharing these perspectives from Edgar Cayce's extensive body of readings, we hope to contribute to your own spiritual understanding and preparation for life's greatest mystery. Whatever your beliefs about death and afterlife, may this exploration inspire you to live with greater awareness, kindness, and dedication to the spiritual growth that serves both yourself and all of humanity. They say that the first 72 hours after death decide everything. But what if those hours aren't just a passage? What if they're a map? A precise, invisible journey the soul must face before it can truly awaken. Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, described those moments not as chaos but as order, a divine structure written into the laws of the universe itself. According to his readings, the soul doesn't simply go somewhere. It returns through layers of vibration, each one revealing who we truly are beneath the illusion of the flesh. These first hours, Cayce said, expose every truth we've hidden from ourselves, our fears, our attachments, our unfinished lessons. It's not punishment, it's recognition. As the physical body fades, the soul becomes a mirror, reflecting every act, every emotion, every moment we ignored the call of spirit. For some, those 72 hours are liberation. For others, a storm of realization so intense it bends time itself. The map Cayce revealed is both terrifying and merciful because it shows us not what waits beyond, but who we have become before we cross the line. Do you believe the soul truly knows where it's going after death? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective may open a conversation that changes how others see the afterlife forever. When Edgar Cayce was asked what happens in the moments after death, he described something far deeper than a simple transition. He said that the soul, upon leaving the body, enters a state of awareness unlike anything the human mind can imagine. It is not silence but expansion, a sudden awakening where every thought and emotion becomes visible. The soul realizes, often with overwhelming clarity, that it has never truly died before. Cayce explained that the first phase of these 72 hours is the recognition of self, the moment when the spirit detaches from the physical vessel but still feels the pull of the earth, of memory, of those it loves. He said that many spirits linger near their bodies, confused or peaceful, depending on how they lived. Some even try to speak, to touch, to reassure their loved ones, unaware that words no longer belong to them. He called this period the bridge between the seen and the unseen. During these hours, the soul is not judged by others, but by its own vibration. It senses instantly whether it carries light or weight, whether it moves upward toward harmony or remains bound by the desires and fears of the flesh. For Cayce, this was the true meaning of resurrection, not a return of the body, but an awakening of consciousness. The soul begins to move through planes that match its inner condition. A life filled with love and forgiveness rises easily, almost effortlessly toward brighter realms. A life chained by anger, greed, or regret struggles to lift, pulled down by the same forces it once fed. Cayce insisted that no soul is abandoned. Angels, guides, and loved ones who have already crossed come forward to assist in the passage. But he also warned that recognition depends on awareness. If a soul clings too tightly to earthly things, to possessions, to hatred, to disbelief, it may not perceive those who come to help. This is why he urged people to prepare while still alive, not through fear of punishment, but through the cultivation of love and truth. He said, "Heaven is not a place to be found after death. It is the result of what we carry within us when that hour arrives." And so, the first 72 hours are not merely a countdown. They are revelation itself. The soul replays the life it just lived, not as a movie but as feeling. Every thought returns as sensation. Every action is experienced from the other side. When we caused pain, we feel it. When we gave love, we receive it multiplied. It is not God who condemns us. It is our own soul revealing what it has become. Cayce compared this to standing before a perfect mirror that shows not the body, but the spirit's true face. Cayce revealed that these first 72 hours are not measured by clocks, but by consciousness. To the soul, time bends. A single second may feel like eternity, and eternity may pass like a sigh. Everything depends on awareness, how awake the spirit was before the body fell silent. Those who lived in constant connection with God, through prayer and inner peace, experienced this passage as a gentle unfolding. But those who denied the existence of the spirit may find themselves lost in their own confusion, wandering in a realm shaped by their disbelief. Cayce described it as a shadow between worlds, a state where the mind must face its own creations until it remembers the light. He explained that in this stage, every soul is drawn toward the dimension that reflects its inner tone. The higher the vibration, the closer it moves toward divine presence. Cayce's reading spoke of planes filled with pure thought, colors beyond imagination, and sounds that carry meaning directly to the heart. He said the soul doesn't simply see, it knows. It becomes aware of its purpose, of the people it influenced, and of the divine thread that connected every moment of its earthly life. The spirit realizes that nothing was random. Every pain, every joy, every loss was part of the map guiding it home. Yet he also warned, not all souls rise easily. Some remain near the material plane, unable to let go of what they once possessed. These are the ones who hover, who watch, who feel but cannot touch. They are not condemned, only bound by the weight of their own attachment. Cayce taught that prayer from the living can help release such souls, reminding them of their true nature. Love, he said, has no barrier between worlds. When we pray for those who have passed, our thoughts become light that guides them toward peace. At around the midpoint of these 72 hours, Cayce said a second awakening occurs, the moment when the soul begins to perceive its guides clearly. Some see a radiant figure, others hear a voice within that calls them by name. For many, this is the moment of surrender, the instant they let go of fear and allow the current of divine law to carry them upward. Cayce described this as entering the house of many mansions, where each spirit finds rest according to what it has become. If you're watching this and you've ever wondered what truly happens after the final breath, pause for a moment. Reflect on the life you're living now, the thoughts you feed, the love you give, and the faith you carry. Because according to Edgar Cayce, those very things will shape your journey in those sacred 72 hours. Like this video if it resonates with you, and subscribe so more people can discover these hidden truths about the soul's divine path. Cayce explained that beyond this midpoint, the soul begins to remember who it truly is, not a human being searching for meaning, but a fragment of the divine learning to love again. He said that the Creator never abandons his children, even in the spaces between life and death. In his visions, he saw souls being gently drawn toward dimensions of light, where every thought becomes a building block of reality. Love attracts beauty, fear creates barriers. The soul learns this instantly, not through teaching but through direct experience. It realizes that heaven and hell are not places but conditions of the heart. For those who lived in harmony with God, this stage feels like coming home. They recognize familiar presences, not only loved ones from the past but souls they once knew in other lives, in other times. Cayce's readings affirm the continuity of existence, the idea that each life is a chapter in a greater story written by the Spirit itself. The soul reviews not only what it did, but what it learned. It sees patterns, connections, and divine purposes that the physical mind could never grasp. Every suffering that once felt meaningless reveals its reason. Every unanswered prayer shows how it shaped strength and compassion within. But for those who lived in denial of spirit, this realization can be overwhelming. Cayce said that some souls resist the light because it forces them to see the truth of their actions. They wander in what he described as the gray plane, a dimension of their own making where fear and confusion create endless repetition until love from others reaches them. He compared this to the mercy of Christ extending even into the darkest corners of existence, calling every soul back to remembrance. No one is lost forever. The map of those 72 hours always leads toward redemption, though some paths take longer to walk. Cayce's insights remind us that the choices we make now echo far beyond the grave. He often told people to build heaven in the heart while alive, because death only magnifies what already exists within. Every act of kindness becomes light in the afterlife. Every moment of resentment becomes shadow. These are not metaphors, they are energetic truths. The spiritual body, Cayce said, is molded by our thoughts and emotions. What we cultivate in life becomes the clothing of the soul. When we leave this world, we wear what we've woven, and it cannot be hidden. In the final stage of the 72 hours, Cayce said the soul approaches the threshold of true awareness, the moment when individuality and divinity meet. He described this not as a doorway, but as an unveiling. The spirit begins to perceive the light that Christ promised, a brilliance that holds no shadow. But to step fully into it, the soul must release the last remnants of self, pride, guilt, attachment, the illusion of control. Many resist, afraid of losing identity, not realizing that what dies here is only the mask. What remains is the eternal self, the part made in the image of God. Cayce emphasized that Jesus Christ is not simply a figure waiting on the other side, but the pattern of the soul's own evolution. He said that every spirit moves toward the Christ consciousness, the complete alignment of will with divine love. During these final hours, the soul either surrenders to that light or turns away, choosing to linger in lower planes until it's ready. There is no eternal damnation, only delay. God's mercy, he said, is endless, but awareness must be chosen. The soul cannot be forced into the light, it must desire it. As the soul crosses this threshold, Cayce described a profound silence, not emptiness, but peace. It is here that the soul rests in what he called the bosom of the Creator, where it reviews not only the life just lived, but the many before it. Purpose becomes clear. The lessons of love, forgiveness, and compassion reveal their true value. The spirit understands that salvation is not a gift given after death, but a state achieved through every thought and act of harmony with divine law. Cayce urged people to live each day as preparation for this moment, to make prayer not a ritual, but a state of being. He reminded us that death is not the end of life, but the continuation of consciousness. The same light that guided Jesus through resurrection shines for every soul willing to see it. What we experience in those 72 hours depends on how much of that light we allow into our hearts now. And that choice, between fear and faith, ego and surrender, is made long before the final breath. So let this message awaken something within you. Reflect on your purpose, your connection with God, and the love you give to others, because according to Cayce, those things shape eternity. If this message touched you, like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Your words might guide someone else toward faith, toward peace, toward remembering that the soul never truly dies. It only returns to where it began. Cayce often said that the fear of death is the greatest illusion of the human mind. He explained that this fear exists because we've forgotten who we are. When the soul understands itself as eternal, the concept of death loses meaning. He encouraged people to meditate daily, not as escape but as training for awareness, the same awareness the soul will face after leaving the body. In meditation, we learn to detach gently from the senses, to silence the noise of the world, to awaken to the inner voice that connects us to the divine. That voice, he said, is the same that guides us through the first 72 hours after death. He described those hours as a rehearsal of the higher worlds. The soul learns through contrast, through recognizing that light cannot exist without understanding shadow. The suffering and confusion some souls feel after death are not punishments, but opportunities for realization. When the spirit finally turns toward the light, it does so by choice with understanding, and that choice strengthens it forever. Cayce said that every soul, no matter how lost, will one day hear the call of the Christ consciousness within itself. It may take hours or ages, but love never ceases to reach. This teaching doesn't only prepare us for what comes after death, it transforms how we live. If you understand that every action echoes in eternity, every word gains weight. Forgiveness becomes a necessity, not an option. Compassion becomes the path back home. Cayce's message was never about fear, it was about awakening to responsibility. He taught that spiritual law is perfect, and everything we experience, both joy and pain, is the reflection of our own vibration. When we lift others, we rise with them. When we harm, we bind ourselves. So when you think of the first 72 hours of the soul, don't see them as distant or mysterious. See them as the mirror of your daily life. The choices you make today, the thoughts you entertain, the love you withhold, the peace you cultivate, are shaping your afterlife right now. The hidden map Cayce described is not only written in heaven, it's drawn by every decision of your heart. In truth, we are all walking that map already. Cayce said the purpose of his revelations was never to satisfy curiosity about death, but to awaken the living. Every time he spoke of the afterlife, his intention was to teach how to live with purpose here and now. He believed that when a person understands the eternal nature of the soul, selfishness dissolves. You stop chasing temporary victories and begin seeking what never fades: truth, compassion, and unity with God. He often reminded his followers that Christ did not come merely to promise heaven, but to show that heaven begins within the human heart. The map of the first 72 hours, then, is not a secret of death, but a mirror of how well we've learned to love while alive. He urged humanity to walk daily in awareness that the spirit world is not far away. It interpenetrates the physical, just as light passes through glass. Every prayer, every sincere act of forgiveness creates openings for divine energy to flow. These currents shape the soul's path when the physical life ends. Cayce said that when we align with God's will through service and humility, those 72 hours become radiant and effortless. But when we live without awareness, We create obstacles for ourselves that must later be faced in those same moments. The universe, he said, is merciful but exact. Nothing is lost, nothing is ignored. And so the teachings of Edgar Cayce are not meant to scare but to illuminate. They call us to live consciously, to treat others as eternal beings walking beside us toward the same light. If you're still listening to this message, it's not by chance. Something in you recognizes the truth of it. The soul already knows the path home. It only needs to remember. Let this be that reminder. Allow it to awaken the part of you that still believes in goodness, still feels the presence of the divine, still knows that life continues beyond sight. Before you go, support this work by liking this video, subscribing, and leaving a comment sharing how this message touched your faith. You never know who might read your words and find peace through them. For as Cayce said, no soul is ever alone. And maybe, just maybe, the light you share today becomes the very light that guides another soul through its first 72 hours. Imagine leaving this world right now and, upon opening your eyes again, you're already in a new body, living another life with no memory of the past, or perhaps wandering for centuries in the spiritual realm, waiting for the right moment to return. After all, what happens after death? Is reincarnation immediate, or can it take hundreds of years? Edgar Cayce brought shocking revelations about this, and what you're about to hear today could completely change your view of life and death. If you've ever lost someone dear and wonder when you'll see them again, or if you feel like your soul has lived other existences, then you need to watch this video until the end. We're going to explore psychic readings and spiritual revelations that explain the time between one incarnation and another, revealing what really happens behind the scenes of the spiritual world. Do all souls return quickly? Or are their souls trapped for long periods? The answers will surprise you, but first I want to know your opinion. Do you believe reincarnation is immediate, or do you think it can take centuries? Comment down below, because I'm going to heart the best comments. And if you want to help this channel grow and bring more and more content about spirituality, subscribe now and hit the notification bell, because there are many revelations coming. Let's discover together the mysteries of soul rebirth. The idea of reincarnation awakens deep emotions. For many, it's a sign of hope, the chance to correct mistakes, reunite with past loves, or continue an unfinished spiritual journey. For others, it's a frightening mystery, an endless cycle of birth and death. But does this process happen immediately after death, or can it take centuries before a soul returns? Edgar Cayce's revelations and numerous psychic readings bring surprising answers. In Cayce's teachings, there's no fixed rule for the time between one life and another. Some souls return quickly, while others remain for centuries in the spiritual plane, awaiting the right moment to be reborn. But what determines this difference? Could it be karma, spiritual evolution, or the need for learning? There are impressive cases of people who claim to have memories of past lives that happened shortly before their birth. On the other hand, there are reports of psychics who brought messages from spirits who had been disembodied for hundreds of years and still hadn't returned to Earth. What explains this? Edgar Cayce gave thousands of psychic readings that showed the time of reincarnation varies for each spirit. In many cases, spirits return quickly because they have unfinished missions or strong bonds with those who remained. Parents who depart early often return as children or grandchildren of their own descendants. In contrast, there are those who need to spend an extensive period in the spiritual plane, preparing for a new existence. These are spirits who need learning, healing, or even karmic rescues before they're able to reincarnate. But is it possible to choose when to return? Many spiritual accounts say yes. More evolved spirits have greater autonomy to decide the ideal moment to reincarnate. They choose their families, living conditions, and even the challenges they'll face. However, for those who haven't reached a high level of consciousness, reincarnation may be determined by higher spiritual laws. Some are called to return due to urgent need for learning, while others must wait until the family and social environment is prepared to receive them. Cases of spontaneous memories of past lives reinforce this theory. Children who remember names, dates, and places from their previous existences indicate that for some spirits, reincarnation can happen quickly. But then, what prevents others from returning? Are there factors that delay reincarnation? Attachment to earthly life, suffering for what was left behind, or even serious failures committed in the last existence can influence the time a spirit remains in the spiritual plane. Another crucial point is spiritual programming. Before reincarnating, the spirit goes through detailed planning, where it defines its mission, its tests, and even the difficulties it will face. This process can take time, as it depends on harmony between the spirit and the conditions necessary for its return. Some spirits wait decades or centuries to be reborn into the right family at the ideal moment for their development. Now, an impressive fact. There are reports of spirits who refuse to reincarnate. Fear of pain, fear of failing again, or difficulty letting go of the spiritual world can make some spirits postpone their return. But how long is this allowed? Can spiritual mentors intervene? Is there a time limit for remaining in the spiritual plane? These are questions we'll delve deeper into in the next few minutes. In the spiritual world, time doesn't work the same way as on Earth. For us, a decade might seem like an eternity, but for a disembodied spirit, it might be just an instant. This means that while some souls may perceive their reincarnation as immediate, others feel they've gone through a long period of learning and preparation before returning. This would explain why some people reincarnate a few years after dying, while others seem to sleep for centuries before returning to the cycle of life. Another determining factor in reincarnation time is the degree of spiritual evolution. Higher spirits have greater control over their reincarnations and can decide when and where they want to be born. Spirits in lower stages may need to wait until conditions are favorable for their learning. Edgar Cayce left us countless readings revealing that the spiritual plane is organized and nothing happens by chance. But what about those who committed serious errors in past lives? What happens to them? According to Cayce's readings, some spirits become trapped in lower astral regions where they go through periods of suffering and purification before having a new opportunity to reincarnate. For these souls, time can be much longer, as they first need to free themselves from traumas, regrets, and negative feelings they carry from their last life. However, there's an even more surprising aspect. Spirits can be prevented from reincarnating by higher decisions. This occurs when they haven't yet learned the necessary lessons in the spiritual plane, or when they need to wait for the formation of a family group that enables their new journey. Some souls need to be reborn under specific conditions to resolve karmic debts, and this can take decades or even centuries for all the puzzle pieces to fall into place. And what about those who feel they don't belong to this life? Many people report having a constant sensation of displacement, as if they didn't belong to the time or place where they were born. Some believe this happens because these souls spent a long time in the spiritual plane before reincarnating again. Other theories suggest these spirits came from higher dimensions and are here for specific missions, bringing teachings and transformations to humanity. There are also cases of spirits who return quickly to fulfill unfinished tasks. Many psychics report stories of children who talk about their past lives with frightening details, remembering names, cities, and even causes of death. These cases are studied by scientists around the world, and some reports are so impressive they challenge traditional logic. What would explain these memories? Would it be an indication that reincarnation can be immediate for some souls? Another intriguing aspect is the influence of spiritual bonds on reincarnation. Spirits connected by love, friendship, or even deep conflicts often reincarnate together to evolve mutually. Many times, the spirit that departed returns as a child, grandchild, or even as a close friend. This spiritual connection can accelerate or delay reincarnation, depending on the level of learning and forgiveness involved. And what if a spirit doesn't want to reincarnate? There are reports of spirits who, out of fear or attachment to the spiritual world, try to postpone their return to the physical body. However, at some point, the need for evolution imposes itself, and they end up reincarnating, even against their will. This process can be conducted by spiritual mentors, who help these souls understand the importance of a new earthly experience. But what happens when someone dies tragically? Can accidents, murders, and premature deaths influence reincarnation time? Edgar Cayce revealed that in many cases, spirits who depart abruptly may return quickly to complete their mission. However, this isn't always a rule. Some need a longer time of recovery and learning before they're ready for a new life. The cycle of reincarnation is one of the universe's greatest mysteries. Each spirit has its own journey, and the time between one life and another is determined by countless factors. Whether immediate or after centuries, the truth is that we're all in constant evolution, always walking toward learning and spiritual illumination. And there's an even more intriguing detail in this process. Spirits can reincarnate in different parts of the world, with no apparent connection to their previous lives. This would explain why some people feel attracted to cultures, languages, and places they've never known in this life. Would it be a reflection of a past existence in another civilization? Many spiritual researchers believe so. Edgar Cayce related in various readings that some souls need to reincarnate in completely different locations to learn new lessons. A spirit who had power and wealth in the past might be born into a humble family to understand the value of simplicity. Similarly, someone who committed abuses against other people might return in a position of vulnerability to feel firsthand the pain they caused. This process isn't punishment, but rather a divine mechanism of learning and spiritual growth. And what about soulmates? Do spirits who love each other deeply always reincarnate together? This is a very common question, and the answer is, it depends. Some souls have such an intense connection that they're reborn close to each other, whether as spouses, siblings, or friends. However, in some cases, a time of separation may be necessary for each to evolve individually before a reunion in another life. True love is never lost. It just transforms and strengthens throughout incarnations. Another aspect many ignore is the influence of the spiritual plane on choosing the physical body. A spirit can't always be born exactly as it would like. Often, karmic issues determine characteristics like health, physical limitations, and even appearance. This explains why some people are born with genetic diseases or face difficulties from early on. Everything is part of a greater plan, outlined even before birth. But do all spirits accept this destiny? The answer is no. Some try to resist, seeking to avoid certain tests or challenges. However, as we've mentioned, at some point the need for evolution speaks louder, and reincarnation ends up happening. There are reports of spirits who spent centuries trying to flee their responsibilities, until they finally understood that only through earthly experience could they grow and overcome their past mistakes. And there's still a crucial detail: what happens to spirits who for some reason can't reincarnate? There are reports of souls who get trapped between dimensions, wandering aimlessly, unable to advance to the next stage. Edgar Cayce explained that these spirits are usually trapped by feelings like hatred, excessive attachment to matter, or extreme suffering. They need spiritual help to find their way back to the light, and only then can they reincarnate again. The question of time between incarnations can also be observed in cases of mediumship. Many people report contacts with spirits who passed away centuries ago and still haven't returned to Earth. Why does this happen? Would they be souls who already completed their cycle of reincarnations, or would they just be waiting for the right moment to return? Cayce's teachings show that spiritual evolution can be achieved both in the physical plane and in the spiritual plane, and some very elevated spirits no longer need to reincarnate, as they've already fulfilled their learning journey. On the other hand, there are those who return with great speed, often being born into the same family they left. Edgar Cayce gave readings about children who died prematurely and returned a few years later as siblings or cousins, maintaining a strong bond with their parents. These cases demonstrate that for some souls, the return to Earth is almost immediate, without the need for long periods in the spiritual plane. But what about the sensation of déjà vu? That impression that we've already lived a certain situation before, or that we know someone we just met. Many believe this is a remnant of past lives, a small fragment of memory that manifests in the present. This would indicate that even after reincarnating, our soul carries subtle memories of previous experiences. The truth is that reincarnation is one of the greatest mysteries of human existence. Each spirit follows a unique path, and the time between one life and another is determined by countless factors. Whether returning quickly or waiting centuries to reincarnate, what's important is understanding that each experience has a greater purpose. We're all in constant evolution, learning, growing, and preparing for new journeys. Now tell me, have you ever had an experience that made you believe in reincarnation? Any strange memory, déjà vu, or inexplicable connection with someone? Comment down below, because I'm going to read and heart the most interesting comments. And if this video made sense to you, if it brought you important reflections, go ahead and leave your like to help this content reach more people. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, because we have many more revelations about spirituality coming. See you in the next video. And there's something even more surprising in this process: the relationship between reincarnation and spiritual missions. Some souls don't return to Earth just to evolve individually, but to fulfill greater purposes, helping humanity advance. Edgar Cayce always emphasized that there are missionary spirits who choose to reincarnate at strategic moments and places to bring knowledge, love, and transformation. These spirits often have incarnations planned with millimetric precision, and therefore may wait long periods in the spiritual plane until all conditions are perfect for their return. A clear example of this are the great personalities who marked history, like scientists, spiritual leaders, and inventors. Could it be that these geniuses of humanity had to wait centuries to be born at the exact moment when their discoveries would make a difference? Spiritual accounts indicate yes. Spirits with great missions may need to await society's progress, so their reincarnation has the necessary impact. But if some souls return quickly and others wait centuries, is there some mechanism that defines this? According to Cayce's teachings, there are spiritual councils responsible for guiding each spirit's reincarnation. These groups of illuminated beings analyze the soul's trajectory, its needs, its karmic debts, and its mission before defining when and where it should be reborn. And most interesting is that many souls participate in this process. In Edgar Cayce's readings, we find descriptions of spirits gathered in great halls, watching projections of their past lives, and evaluating what lessons they still need to learn. They receive guidance from mentors, and often choose their own tests and challenges. This means that, even facing life's difficulties, nothing happens by chance. Each obstacle we face may have been chosen by ourselves before reincarnating, with the goal of accelerating our evolution. However, this planning doesn't always occur peacefully. There are cases of spirits who, upon perceiving the difficulties they'll face, enter despair and try to flee the commitment of reincarnation. Some try to negotiate changes in their life plan, while others, in more primitive states of consciousness, may resist to the point of needing help from mentors to accept returning to Earth. Another factor that influences reincarnation time is the connection between spirits. Many souls have such strong bonds that they reincarnate together multiple times, forming spiritual families that help each other mutually. However, when there are unresolved conflicts, a longer period of separation may be necessary for each spirit to mature before a new encounter. This would explain why some people feel an instant connection with someone they just met, while others have complicated relationships from first contact. And what about spirits who lose the opportunity to reincarnate? Does this really happen? The answer is yes. Some souls receive the chance to return, but due to fear or attachment to the spiritual plane, they refuse the call. When this occurs, they may have to wait for a new cycle until a new opportunity arises. This can delay their development, making them lose valuable chances for growth. And there's still a little discussed detail: the influence of the spiritual world on the life we'll have here on Earth. Some spirits are reborn with physical limitations, financial difficulties, or emotional challenges that were chosen before birth as part of their learning. On the other hand, there are those who, through merit and evolution, manage to program more harmonious existences, with less suffering and more opportunities for growth. All this leads us to an essential question: how can we prepare for our next reincarnation? If we know our current life directly influences our future existence, how can we act now to guarantee a more peaceful and evolutionary journey? According to Edgar Cayce and various illuminated spirits, the key to a good reincarnation lies in living with love, gratitude, and purpose. The more we help others, the more we evolve, and the better chances we have of building a better future. And now I want to know from you: do you believe you've lived other lives? Do you feel your soul carries memories from past existences? Tell us in the comments, because I'll be reading and leaving a heart on the most interesting accounts. If this video brought important reflections to you, go ahead and leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more content about spirituality. Your participation helps this channel grow and reach more people who need these messages. Hit the notification bell and see you in the next video. And there's still a mystery many don't know about: the influence of emotional state on reincarnation time. According to the spirits who communicated through Edgar Cayce's readings, those who pass away in peace, accepting their transition and trusting the divine plan, tend to have a faster and more organized return. Those who depart with resentment, hatred, or feelings of revenge may face a long period of disturbance before being able to return to matter. This is because negative emotions create blocks that make preparation for a new existence difficult. And what happens to those who died unexpectedly, like in accidents or tragedies? These spirits may have a longer adaptation time in the spiritual plane before reincarnating again. This occurs because often sudden death causes such a great impact that the soul needs a period of recovery and understanding before moving on to a new journey. There are also reports of spirits who return to complete an interrupted mission, people who, in a previous life, were close to achieving something grand, but had their existence cut short prematurely, may reincarnate quickly to complete their task. This would explain cases of child prodigies, who from a very young age demonstrate extraordinary abilities in music, science, or art. Could these souls just be resuming what they had already started in a previous incarnation? Another fascinating point is the existence of spirits who reincarnate with very vivid memories of their past lives. In some cases, this happens because the time between one existence and another was extremely short, not giving the soul enough time to completely erase its previous memories. These memories can come in the form of dreams, feelings of familiarity with unknown places, or even in recognizing people they've never seen before in this life. And there are still cases of spirits who return to rescue debts from the past. People who were oppressive leaders, for example, may reincarnate in humble positions to learn the value of empathy and equality. Those who caused suffering may be reborn in the same situation they imposed on others, to feel firsthand the impacts of their actions. This law of cause and effect is one of the foundations of spiritual doctrine and explains many of the difficulties we face in our lives. But can we accelerate our evolution process to guarantee a more harmonious next incarnation? Yes. And the key to this lies in how we live our current life. The more we cultivate love, generosity, and forgiveness, the more we elevate our spiritual vibration, and this allows us to reincarnate under more favorable conditions in the future. Spirits who dedicate their existence to good usually have happier and more productive reincarnations, as they've already learned important lessons and no longer need to go through certain tests. And now we come to an essential question. Is there a limit number of reincarnations, or do we continue returning to Earth infinitely? According to Edgar Cayce's teachings, the reincarnation cycle continues until the spirit reaches such a high level of consciousness that it no longer needs to return to the material world. These illuminated souls go on to inhabit higher planes, where their mission becomes helping those who are still in the learning process. Edgar Cayce left us valuable messages about this. He revealed that in many cases, spirits who have reached a high degree of evolution still choose to reincarnate, but not out of their own necessity, but out of love for humanity. They return as guides, teachers, and spiritual leaders, helping to transform the world and bringing light to those who are still in initial stages of the spiritual journey. So if reincarnation can be immediate for some and take centuries for others, what can we do now to guarantee a better future for our soul? The answer is simple. Live with purpose, seek spiritual knowledge, and above all, practice love and compassion. Our behavior today defines not only our future in this life, but also the conditions of our next incarnations. Now I want to know your opinion. Do you feel you've lived before? Do you have any memory, dream, or experience that makes you believe in reincarnation? Comment down below, because I'm going to read and heart the best comments. And if this video brought new reflections to you, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This really helps bring this knowledge to more people and strengthen our community. hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos, because we have many more incredible contents about spirituality coming. See you next time.